Let's talk about the New York Times and how they are sort of on a parallel track to the DOJ in, I don't know if I want to say out to get you, but certainly adverse to you. Tell us what happened. It was it the day before the raid, the day of the raid, the day after the raid, or all three that the New York Times started reporting on the raid?
All three. Megyn, what happened was I was in handcuffs and I was in my apartment. The FBI had just executed a search warrant against an American journalist and unlawfully and broke the law, as all the things we just talked about. And then minutes later, I get a text message from Mike Schmidt, national security reporter, New York Times, who somehow he knows all these details. And I don't think the neighbors tipped him off that this is something that he knew. He had leaks from the Department of Justice. And we have the entire national security team at the New York Times, Adam Goldman, Mike Schmidt, Mark Mazzetti. These are Pulitzer Prize winning reporters who've done some dozen plus stories about this diary, working with the DOJ, trying to advance this unknown theory that we somehow had something to do with this diary being stolen. We didn't. Even Mike Schmidt later admitted that it appears perhaps the government may have overreached. But the New York Times, Megyn, as you point out, I've sued them for defamation stemming from an investigation I did in 2020. And in extraordinary fashion, we got past motion to dismiss in New York State. And the judge in New York said that the New York Times was engaged in disinformation against Project Veritas when they said that our videos were deceptive. So we got past this huge barrier. And the New York Times has kind of been on a seek and destroy mission against our organization. And days after this raid, the New York Times publishes my attorney-client privileged communications. They publish private documents. The documents make me look good, but on principle, I mean, the documents were saying that we don't break the law, and we checked with lawyers to make sure everything we do is legal. But on principle, why and how is the New York Times obtaining these private documents from within my organization?
James, you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of Erin Andrews, a sports reporter, who had some creep spying on her through her hotel window or a hotel peep hole in the door and taking videos of her nude that she didn't consent to and didn't know about. And at the time it broke, there was all this speculation amongst guys in our industry about whether she orchestrated it because she looked so good. She looked amazing. Erin, she's a friend. She's gorgeous. Erin was deeply traumatized by what happened to her. Trust me when I tell you she had absolutely nothing to do with it. It wasn't a setup, and remains traumatized by the whole thing to this day. But the point is not how good you look when someone inappropriately looks through the peephole. The point is, why are they looking through the peephole? And when you have the New York Times with your attorney-client privileged information, the question is not why does he look so good and does that make us think he allowed this? The question is, what the hell are you doing looking through the peephole?
Yeah, it's in American jurisprudence, attorney-client privilege. We're in litigation against the New York Times because some people, I said that because, well, James, you're an undercover guy, you're a hypocrite. No. I would never publish the attorney-client communications of an adversary that I was currently in litigation with. That's sanctionable conduct. Just like you wouldn't publish, there are certain things I just don't publish. I stay away from people's private lives. I don't publish, conversations with therapists that people have. So this happens. And a judge in New York, now keep in mind, we got past motion to dismiss. The judge issues this stunning order against the New York Times saying that they're engaged in disinformation and deception. They're projecting onto Project Veritas what they do when they accuse me of editing. And then on Christmas Eve, December 24th, some 6 weeks after the raid, the judge in New York, Supreme Court of New York, orders the New York Times to sequester these memorandums. They order them that they've misbehaved. And the New York Times just goes bonkers. They write an op-ed that this is like the Pentagon Papers. You're against the First Amendment, which is, of course, absurd. Publishing the attorney-client memorandums of Project Veritas, who you're in litigation with and whom you're entering discovery in a lawsuit, is not like publishing the Pentagon Papers about national security. And furthermore, the New York Times continues to dox our sources, Megyn. These reporters, Adam Goldman and Mark Mazzetti, go to Florida and they dox our sources that communicate to us about Joe Biden. They publish the names of the sources, which is the very harassment, quote unquote, that they project onto me. What they accuse me of is what they do.
Well, but,
and this, again,
but
these
the
are
bottom line here is that
the
Times and the DOJ are clearly coordinating, because there's no way the Times would have known about the raid or had your attorney-client privilege communications if they hadn't received a leak. And you're not the leak. So it's not going to be your lawyers leaking in the New York Times. As you say, it's not your neighbors who wouldn't have had your attorney-client privilege information. Right. So, like you say, smells like a duck. And in this case, it appears to be a duck that's coordinating in the guise of the DOJ with the New York Times. So they have many reasons to dislike you. It's not just your lawsuit, but there's this other guy. So you get this guy on tape. I have to play this soundbite because people need to understand why these guys hate your guts and want to shut you up, and why it's important for the rest of us to not let that happen. There's a reporter for the New York Times named Matthew Rosenberg who, I want the audience to understand, writes pieces for the Times entitled, for example, this is about January 6th, "The Next Big Lies. January 6th was no big deal," or "A left-wing plot." Okay, so that's kind of stuff he writes. You get him through one of your operatives, a journalist, a young woman, on tape in a more candid moment, speaking about January 6th. And listen to this. If you watch it on YouTube later, you'll see it transcribed. I think you can understand it well enough for us to play it for our listening audience as well. Listen.
It's like January 6th stuff that is like so over at this point. It's so over. The left's overreaction, the left's reaction to it in some places was so over the top. It was like me and two other colleagues who were there, who were outside. And we were just having fun. Dude, come on. Like, you were not in any danger. I think you could tell how much fun we had on January 6th.
Oh, that's great. Are you allowed to have that much fun on January 6th? Aren't you supposed to be mourning?
I know. So if you're traumatized. But like, all these colleagues who were in the building, a little younger, who's like, oh my God, it's so scary. I'm like, oh, God.
Is that really the vibe there?
From them. I'm like, come on. Like, it's not the kind of place I can sit, tell somebody to man up, but I kind of want to. You're like, dude, come on. Like, you were not in any danger.
You were not in any danger. The left's reaction was so over the top, and on and on. But the pieces that he wrote, Next Big Lies, January 6th was no big deal. Then he writes a piece, 90 Seconds of Rage. Then he goes on about Capitol attack could fuel extremist recruitment for years, experts warn. How to decode the far right symbols at the Capitol riot. I mean, he's very, very interested in stirring up emotions on January 6th when he's writing for the Times. Behind the scenes with your operative, not so much. He's laughing about what fun the day was. So put that in perspective for us, James.
He contradicts. This is a Pulitzer Prize winning reporter for the New York Times contradicting himself in private in a social situation where he did not know he was being recorded. He was speaking to one of my colleagues, a journalist who did not identify herself as such. And he says, and I can't even say on the radio some of the things this man says, but he called his colleagues effing B words. He said, you're traumatized. And in the New York Times, there's a schism right now between the woke elements and kind of the traditional newsroom elements. These two are clashing and they're contradictory. And this guy appears to have some sort of common sense, reasonable thoughts. Like, we're overhyping this. This is too much. It might be something that someone on this audience would say. And he got in trouble for saying these things. Dean Baquet, the head of the New York Times, had a meeting. People were upset. And Dean Baquet said, we don't want to empower James O'Keefe by being responding too harshly to this. If it was anybody else that published this tape except me, this man probably would have lost his job and there would have been hell to pay. But what's remarkable about this tape is that Rosenberg, I sat down with Rosenberg, kind of Chris Hansen, NBC Dateline style. I sat down in the chair when she got up to go to the bathroom. And he then said to me, and it's on YouTube, it's on tape. He goes, you got me in private. I was just in a social situation. And then I showed him a video of himself, quite literally saying, it's fair game at the New York Times to get people in social situations and at bars. So everything that came out of this man's mouth was a contradiction. It was almost straight out of George Orwell's 1984 to tell deliberate lies and contradict oneself and to hold two contradictory beliefs at the same time. And this is a New York Times Pulitzer Prize winner.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.